G'day guys and welcome back to Jace's 9.1.5 Arms Warrior PvP guide. Today we're looking at gear, stats and legendaries. No face cam today, I'm in the PJs and I want to stay comfortable. Right, so prior to 9.1.5, stat priority related to your choice of covenant, so either generally Kyrian or Necrolord. If you were Kyrian, you stacked crit, and if you were Necro, you stacked haste. Now that we're all decked out in Unchained Gladiator's gear, stat priority has seen a shift. So the aim now, regardless of covenant, is to follow this stat priority up to certain thresholds. So essentially you're looking at getting 35+% verse, 20% crit, and 10% haste and fuck mastery. So the build is going to provide a balance between potent burst, high consistent damage output, and an overall better feel to your rotation. To achieve the desired breakdown, you want to play around with haste and crit pieces, gems, trinkets, and enchants. So to balance out your stats to achieve these values, you can consider that you're always going to have the haste chest and legs of your Necrolord. If you're Kyrian, you'll be running Elysian Might, so you'll have crit versus legs, and you'll have a haste ring. So it's going to take another 3 to 4 haste pieces to reach the desired thresholds with the badge or crit trinket equipped. You can see for myself, I've utilised the shoulders, the chest, the braces, the boots, and the ring to achieve 10% haste. You can look my character up on the armory if you want to copy that build, but that is going to be for Kyrian, as you're going to have a different legendary for Necrolord and likely in a different spot and with different stats on it. We discussed this in the last video, but there is now a crit verse weapon at the PvP vendor. I suggest picking this up if you don't already have it, because it's going to help you a lot with balancing those stats to achieve the crit value. I have had a few questions surrounding playing haste as Necrolord and all crit as Kyrian, and you can still do that if it's your preference. So the reason looking at a haste build might be a good idea is it does synergize nicely as Necrolord with the Enduring Blow legendary, as haste decreases the GCD and the cooldown of Mortal Strike. So therefore, essentially, you're going to increase the probability of Enduring Blow procs, which will give you the Warbreaker effect, which will increase your consistent damage output. But you will feel that your burst isn't quite as deadly. In saying this, if you're playing with 20% haste, you will be able to fit an additional global into your Warbreaker windows. When you consider playing perhaps all crit, you'll still have sufficient rage generation, and your burst will be massive, but you will notice damage outside of burst windows, and your rotation doesn't feel as fluid as it does with around 10% haste. Okay, now if you have finished your Korthia farm and you do have access to gems, I do suggest you pick up the 2 speed gems. So I've popped those on my rings. The first one's called Straddling Dual Doublet and is essentially going to give you speed increase for each Shadowlands gem you have socketed into your gear. The other one I suggest picking up is this one here, and that's going to be the Straddling Sage Agate, and that's going to give you 5% increased movement speed. Skill Cap actually did a video on combining these two gems together with your cloak, and they found that it increases your speed to around the 16% mark, which is particularly helpful. I'll give you a link to that video in the description below. The other 4 gems, so the one on your head, neck, braces, and belt, I would suggest picking up whatever stats you need to balance out your ratios that we discussed earlier. So to meet the required thresholds, essentially I've put on these 4 here, haste to help me alongside those other pieces of gear to meet that 10% threshold. A factor to keep in mind with secondary stat balancing is beyond 30%, there is a 10% decrease to secondary stats. So this is really only going to affect versatility, but just keep that in mind. Other stats won't reach this amount, so it's not particularly important. Okay guys, another thing that I want to talk to you about today is the trinket choices. So there's not a lot of information out there I've found surrounding how to pick your PvP trinkets. So let's go through those one by one now. First, we'll look at the medallion, which is obviously your PvP trinket. Now this one's going to be a requirement in PvP. Essentially, rotation of these medallions amongst your team members in arena is foundational to surviving enemy kill attempts. So human warriors can get away with playing without this trinket, depending on the matchup. You won't find value outside being human with the sigil or the brooch though, so I'm not going to go over those two. Okay, let's talk about the Unchained Gladiator's Badge of Ferocity. This one's been a very popular pick this season. If you look at the gear choice statistics, this one's actually the most selected trinket amongst options outside of the PvP trinket. The reason this badge is good is it's going to provide you with access to increased on-demand damage, which can be implemented into your burst to make it pump even more. It's also going to provide you with a considerable amount of critical strike, which is going to help with that stat balancing to achieve that value of 20 or more critical strike % chance. Right, another viable option is the Unchained Gladiator's Insignia of Alacrity. It is good if you're considering it to meet the desired stat thresholds, for example, the Haste threshold, but I think the badge is better, mostly due to the control you have over it and its ease of use. If you are going to pick up this insignia, you're probably going to want to find a weak aura to go with it that's going to track procs, and you can use this to attempt to align your damage with the proc windows. The reason that I personally prefer the badge is you do have complete control over its use, so you can decide when you're going to align its effect with your cooldowns. And if your keying this is particularly good, as the effect is on a 1 minute cooldown, which lines up perfectly with your Spear of Bastion. It's still good for Necrolord in saying that, as you can align every second badge with your Conqueror's Bennett to absolutely stupid damage. It's one of those damage modifiers we talked about in the last video that offers you a whole lot of damage as Necrolord. We did cover this in the last video, but I've had a lot of people ask me in game how Necro Warrior does so much damage. And essentially it's a combination of stacking damage modifiers, and I'll pop those up on the screen for you now. But it's essentially going to be Warbreaker, Avatar, Conqueror's Banner, Badge, and the Orc Racial. Alongside Conqueror's Banner, you're going to get additional effects such as Kevin and the Veteran's Repute Conduit, which at item level 252, I believe gives you 20% increased strength. So it's all of those together, and then you just absolutely shred people. All right, the next trinket we're going to look at is the Unchained Gladiator's Emblem. This is a less commonly used option for us as warriors, as we're not generally a desirable target for people to be hitting. If you're certain, however, that you are going to be the target, which can be common into some double wizard compositions, then this is an option to be considered to provide you with an additional defensive tool. Right, the final trinket choice we're going to look at is the Unchained Gladiator Shackles of Malediction. I do think that this trinket choice is still viable depending on the comp that you play and the comp that you're playing against. I've seen this be a great success and it's won me games. I've also seen it fail miserably and it's been useless. I've come up with 2 prerequisites that I think you should satisfy before you consider playing with Shackles. And these include, number 1, is your team coordinated enough to take full benefit of the trinket, including baiting enemy healer dispels and then chaining use of the trinkets. So you can't just throw it out there randomly, it's going to get dispelled or countered. You really need to bait the dispel, then chain them one after the other to get maximum effect. And the second criteria is, does the enemy team have a hybrid against which you're going to get maximum benefit out of using the trinket? Now, if you said yes to both of these criteria, Shackles can be a go. So my main team's pretty good at using this. We chain them one after the other and we get max benefit. So every now and again, if there is a hybrid, we'll pick the trinkets up. The issue with Shackles is the counterplay you're going to face though. So when the trinket is countered, you've just wasted a 3-minute cooldown, which isn't ideal, as you'll probably only get 1 or 2 attempts to use the trinket per game. So essentially you've wasted the 3-minute cooldown and you could have had the Badge of Ferocity the entire time and added this to your burst attempts. Right, obviously I can't be there when you're playing games to tell you which trinket to pick up, but what I encourage you to do is use the information that I've given you with respect to each trinket to match the trinket to the circumstances you're faced with. In addition to that, consider which trinket you need to pick up to balance your stats correctly. Right, before we move on to Legendaries, I just want to go through the enchants you'll be picking up as a warrior, and these choices are quite static. On your cloak, you're going to pick up Fortified Speed, which is a plus 20 stamina increase and minus speed increase, which, like we discussed earlier, synergizes quite nicely with those speed gems. Next one to the chest is Eternal Stats. That's going to be a plus 30 to your primary stats. On the hands, you're going to pick up plus 15 Strength, which is called Eternal Strength. And on the weapon, you're going to pick up Sinful Revelation, which essentially has a chance to proc 6% increased damage to that target for 10 seconds. The enchants on the 2 rings are a little more variable, as you're going to pick the enchant type based on the stat balancing. So I've got plus 16 versatility to each ring. You might go plus 16 versatility or plus 16 haste or plus 16 crit, depending on what you need to achieve those stat thresholds we discussed earlier. All right, guys, moving on to the second half of the guide, we're going to be looking at those legendaries. I know everyone's looking forward to this part of the guide. I've had a lot of questions in relation to legendaries. People want to know which legendary for which covenant. I'm going to start with Elysian Might and work my way through all the meta legendary choices so that you can pick your legendary armed with this knowledge and make the decision that's right for you and your playstyle. So Elysian Might. This one's going to be the go-to legendary choice for Kyrian warriors. It's a Kyrian specific legendary you get upon reaching 48 renown, and it increases the duration of spear by 4 seconds to 8 seconds. It's also going to increase bonus critical strike damage you deal by 15%. It's good because it provides you an alternate method to burst while simultaneously locking down the target for you for 8 seconds. So it has both offensive and defensive components to it. For that reason, it's a very multi-purpose legendary, and it's got the flexibility to work with a lot of different comps. We went over this legendary a little more comprehensively in the Soulbind Conduit guide, so I won't go too much further. There aren't any real downsides to this legendary other than the counterplay abilities that immune targets to the spear's effect. A couple of examples for this would be a Shadow Priest's Fade or a Paladin's Blessing of Protection. So these are going to make your spear more or less useless or force you to put a lot of effort into trying to land a spear. Another note too is that classes with mobility tools like a Mage's Blink can actually bug the spear and free themselves from the effect. So you can ask a mage for a full guide on how to do this, but essentially, as the target's being pulled back, they can use a mobility tool and they can escape from the spear. So to prevent this, you can use Stormbolt and other teammate abilities to lock them down in the spear, as you're still going to get that increased 15% bonus crit damage to that target. So it's still got some kind of value outside of the lockdown effect. Alright, next on the list is Enduring Blow. Had a lot of questions about this legendary in particular. A lot of people want to know why Enduring Blow over Battle Lord, and I will cover that. So Enduring Blow is going to give your Mortal Strikes a 25% chance to apply the Colossus Smash effect to the target for 6 seconds. This is going to be the primary legendary choice for Necrolord and Night Fae warriors. The benefit of Enduring Blow is that it's going to increase sustain damage, and it's also possible to align other cooldowns such as Avatar, the Badge of Ferocity we've been talking about, or the Orc Racial, with Enduring Blow procs to provide additional burst window opportunities. So I like this because it provides enemy rogues and warriors with a bit of a decision when it comes to their use of Disarm. So they can either use it on Warbreaker, or you can get these procs and pair them with other cooldowns, and they've got to make the decision to disarm between those two moments in time. So why would you pick up Enduring Blow specifically over Battlelord? Well, the reason you might pick up Enduring Blow over Battlelord is because the two legendaries essentially provide the same effect. They both increase warrior consistent damage output. The difference is that Enduring Blow does this with less effort input than what Battlelord does. Battlelord still requires you to tag buttons over and over and over, where Enduring Blow simply just procs and provides you with increased damage. The additional benefit too is, like we discussed, you're going to get those additional burst window opportunities where you can pair your Enduring Blow procs with your other offensive cooldowns. Those reasons are the main reasons I would pick up Enduring Blow over Battlelord at this point in time. Battlelord is a lot of fun, and it does make your rotation feel very fluid, but Enduring Blow is the stronger legendary choice. Alrighty, moving on to the next legendary, we're going to look at Unhinged. I'm surprised I haven't had more questions about Unhinged, to be honest. It's the legendary that causes Bladestorm to cast 2 additional Mortal Strikes at a random enemy. This legendary can be an alternate choice for Necrolord warriors and can provide you with crazy burst damage, especially when you pair it with damage modifiers like Conqueror's Banner or Warbreaker. The strength of Unhinged is in the fact that you're able to do such high damage without being CC'd or disarmed, but it does take away Bladestorm as a CC immunity and Root Break. You can take this over Enduring Blow if you anticipate you'll be able to reliably Bladestorm 2 targets. That's an example of such will be into a melee cleave. And I say this for a number of reasons. A, the casted Mortal Strikes are subject to the effect of Sweeping Strikes, meaning you'll be essentially able to cast 4 Mortal Strikes during Bladestorm if you're hitting multiple targets. Additionally, they consume and apply the Sharpened Blade effect when paired with Sweeping Strikes. It can also affect 2 targets. And the last reason is the 4 Mortal Strikes each have a chance to individually trigger an additional Mortal Strike due to the Mortal Combo Conduit. So you can pick up the Storm of Destruction PvP talent as well to bring the Bladestorm cooldown down to 1 minute, meaning you can pair it again with that Badge of Ferocity and or Colossus Smash to consistently tear shreds off the enemy team. So really good choice if you're going to be able to Bladestorm multiple people and you know this. So look at that, again, those melee cleave comps. Right, next legendary we're going to look at is the Exploiter legendary. And this one's going to cause Execute to increase the damage of your next Mortal Strike by 50%, stacking up to 2 times. So this is going to be the go-to legendary of warriors clinging to the Venthyr Dream. Exploit is fantastic for Venthyr warriors as you're constantly executing or condemning, and due to Overpower, also increasing Mortal Strike's damage by 20%, stacking up to 2 times. So you can really hurt people with this legendary by stacking 2 stacks of Execute, 2 stacks of Overpower, and then just sending it. It does feel a little bit clunky though when you're trying to save up for the big Mortal Strikes, especially because Mortal Wounds has a 10-second duration. So one thing to really keep in mind if you're using Exploiter is don't let mortal wounds fall off your target when using the legendary, as the 25% decrease to healing that you get from mortal wounds is more impactful than the extra 20% damage a stack of overpower is going to provide you with. Despite being a little bit clunky when my alt warrior was Venthyr in 9.1, I found this legendary to offer an alternate playstyle which was really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. It really pumps up Condemn's effectiveness by increasing your damage potential alongside the endless mobility you're going to get with a Death Sentence PvP talent, and you want to pick that up always when you're playing Venthyr. Alright guys, moving on to our last legendary choice and our only defensive option. This is going to be Misshapen Mirror. So this is going to provide you and your closest ally with the Spell Reflect effect. Each application of Spell Reflect does work individually as well, meaning you'll reflect the next spell cast on you, and your ally is going to reflect the next spell cast on them. So this won't be your primary legendary choice as any Covenant, but it really is important to have it in to play into certain compositions such as Double Wizard. I recommend all warriors of all 4 Covenants pick this legendary up and just have it in your bag for a rainy day. There'll be some double caster cleaves that you'll really want to have a copy of this. Alright, let's summarize that and put it all together. If you're Kyrian, your best in slot legendary is going to be Elysian Might. If you're Necrolord, your best in slot legendary is going to be Enduring Blow. If you're Venthyr, your best in slot legendary is going to be Exploiter. And if you're Night Fae, your best in slot legendary is going to be Enduring Blow. You can pick up Unhinged as an alternative if you are Necrolord, and all 4 of those Covenant choices are going to want to have a copy of Misshapen Mirror. Righto, with all of that in mind, if you are making the move to Warrior or you're currently playing Warrior, I recommend building your legendaries in the following order depending on your Covenant choice. If you are Kyrian, build Elysian Might first, followed by Misshapen Mirror. You can also build Enduring Blow and Unhinged. You're going to need Enduring Blow and Unhinged in 9.2 when you can use 2 legendaries, because you're going to be able to equip either one of these with Elysian Might, and they're going to make possibly the most powerful combination in the game, in my opinion. If you're Necro, build Enduring Blow, then build Unhinged / Misshapen Mirror in your order of preference. Okay, so you definitely want Enduring Blow first, however build then Unhinged or Misshapen Mirror. Venthyr, obviously Exploiter comes first, then build Misshapen Mirror. If you are Night Fae, I would build Enduring Blow, and again, then Misshapen Mirror. As for the stats on the legendaries, the versatility is a no-brainer. Whether the second missive is crit or haste really comes down to stat balancing. To make it simple, you can build all legendaries as haste verse, and you want to use the badge crit trinket. The exception to this rule is if you are Kyrian, build Elysian Might with crit verse, and if you're Venthyr, build Exploiter with crit verse. Okay? Alright, that's going to close us out for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video on gear stats and legendaries. I hope that clears up a lot of the questions you guys had surrounding those issues. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments. Like, subscribe if you liked this video. And I'll see you next time for rotation and damage. We're going to learn how to absolutely pump, baby. See you in the next video, guys. Peace.